You're watching What's Hot on CNBC TV 18. India's new HRD minister is all for opening up the country's education sector to foreign investment. He also believes that there is a need for a SEBI-type regulator for the sector. Shireen Ban spoke to him and a host of experts on a panel discussion. Let's listen into what Kapil Sibal had to say in that panel.
If you are spending $20 billion by sending your children out, if you to invest that $20 billion in the country, you can transform the entire education sector.
But how do you propose to do that? So how do you propose to do that? Well, because the Right to Education bill, we're hoping that it will come through in the budget session of Parliament. Are you saying that is going to be that is your priority of the 100-day agenda?
Yes, yes, absolutely. It will come through, hopefully, and many other things are going to happen, and I'll make an announcement very soon of my 100-day agenda and the agenda for 5 years.
Give us a sneak peek
at the heart of it will be to open up the entire education sector to greater investment, and to allow children to go to the school that they want without any concern about where the money is going to come from, because we'll have to put in place a loan scheme, both in higher education as well as, of course, public education in government school is going to be free. But even for private schools, if somebody wants to go to a private school, he should be entitled to go to a private school as long as, he gets a loan.
Okay, let me bring up the issue of investment and let me bring up the issue of expenditure, because if one were to actually look at the outlays have gone up significantly from the 10-year plan to the 11th-year plan, almost from about 7.5% to 19%. It's perhaps the first time in India's history that we've seen this kind of money being pumped in. But it's not just a question of money, it's also a question of implementation and execution. How do you monitor? How do you make this accountable?
Well, we are actually doing it. We have, in fact, over the last 5 years, employed some 9 lakh teachers. Lots of schools are being built, but our problem is this is not something that can be done overnight. We have to have a long-term solution, and if ultimately, and there are different issues at different levels. There is the primary school and the secondary school issue. There is the higher education issue. There is the teacher training issue. There is the research issue. There is a issue of skill development. There is an issue of educational reforms across the board. So first we need to have a roadmap, have a national roadmap, and I think the fact that the Prime Minister and over the years has increased expenditure in education and allocation in the budget shows that
are we going to see it hiked further in this budget?
Well, I don't know about adding further, but I think if we are able to muster up the courage to use this money usefully and effectively, I think half the problem will be solved.
Okay, let me get a quick word from you as far as incentivizing private investment. There is a Supreme Court order that says that education cannot be for profit. Is it time now to actually revisit this? And I'm not trying to say that private investors need to make money necessarily out of education, but they need to have sustainable, viable businesses.
Yes, of course they ought to have sustainable, viable businesses, but that doesn't mean that they sort of hive off the profits into other businesses. And I think what we need to do as a rational approach, let institutions make money, but they must go back into education. If somebody sets up an institution, for example, an ordinary school, and he wants to then build a vocational training center from the profits that he makes from the private school, I think he's entitled to do it.
Are you going to push for this change?
Well, we are all looking at these things. I don't think you expect me to start giving you answers as to what is going to happen within, 10 days of my joining the ministry. But certainly I'm looking at 3 issues. One is the issue of access, which means expansion. The other is the issue of equity, which means inclusion. And third is the issue of quality, which means excellence. And I think I'm going to combine all 3 to take this country forward.
A lot of critics say that we have perhaps the most over-regulated system and the most under-governed. Is the time right now to actually reform the education system, especially on the regulatory side, and what are you going to do about it?
Without any doubt, it has to be structurally reformed, both at the school level as well as the higher education level. We need to create, this is not something that I have made up my mind, but we need to create an authority like SEBI, in the education sector, which actually deals with regulation. We need to have an independent accrediting agency that accredits, at the entry point, by giving a provisional certificate, and when the institution is built, to give a final certificate so that the intake can take place. And we need to get the government out of this and give it to an independent regulator. But all of this needs a lot of work and a lot of consensus across the board. And I think that once we do that, then anybody should be able to enter. I'll give you an example. Now, except for the central government or the state government, nobody else can set up a university. Right? And then you have the whole deemed to be the university concept.
That's right. And they're not doing very well, are they?
Why should this happen?
Yeah.
Why should this happen? Anybody should be able to set up a university. And he should be able to compete in the market for the quality of that degree. And as long as you put a system in place, it's very easy to work it out. So you'll get the investment. That 30,000 and 250,000 crore gap will be bridged if you have the appropriate policies in place.
That was Kapil Sibal outlining is perhaps the reforms agenda for the education sector. Well, so the time we have on this edition of What's Hot. Thanks for watching. Markets Today is coming up next.